welcome to this ROV chat. Today, Stephen and I are going to talk about how meditation sets up healing by the earth. So I thought I'd begin today by just reading a post that I did earlier this week on our Raising Our Vibration Community Facebook page, and then that'll lead us into a few quotes from Dr. James Oschman. And then we're going to talk about the toroidal energy field of the human body and the earth and how scalar waves are generated from those flows. So let's begin with this post. So I asked the question, why do our brain waves tend to settle around 7 to 8 hertz in the theta alpha range as our minds quiet in meditation? So Dr. James Oschman says, there's evidence that geomagnetic pulsations strongly entrain brainwaves during meditation and other practices in which one quiets the mind. So these frequencies, that 7 to 8 hertz range, correlate with the Schumann resonance of the Earth's geomagnetic field. So this points to the idea that as our minds become quiet in meditation, they begin to resonate with the natural field of the Earth, which turns out to be very healthful and regenerative for the body and brain. And so with that as a launching off point, in this wonderful book Stephen and I are reading, Energy Medicine by James Oschman, he talks about how toroidal fields, so we've talked about this, that the body battery from the perineum to the crown and how it generates a current, and this creates an electromagnetic field in the human body. And the earth also, with its south and north poles, is like a battery and has a toroidal field. And so Oschman talks about how the field of the earth being so strong, the field that we live in these bodies, will naturally entrain the human field, and that's very healthful. So torus fields tend to also create scalar energy fields. So what's scalar energy? So if we think of frequencies, or we're talking about these nice sine waves, if you normally think of waves like this, if you have waves that are exactly out of phase with those, so the exact out of phase, what happens is the nodes are crossing and the peaks are canceling each other. And you, in that situation in classical physics, that cancels the energy and information in the waves. That's what you would think. But quantum physics has found that actually when those waves interfere and seem to cancel each other, the energy and information is still embedded there in what's called scalar waves and magnetic vector potentials. So the basic idea is that even though there doesn't seem to be any electromagnetic activity going on, there's a scalar activity going on. And scalar energy is pervasive throughout the universe. In fact, it is potentially what structures the entire universe. And the scalar energy of the universe, now as it's been being measured and being theorized about, is this infinite energy that is embedded within the structure of the universe, and it is what is informing all the structures of physical matter. So scalar energy, I made it as I was reading this book and I was learning about scalar energy and this supposed canceling of the oscillations of frequency. It brought to my mind this Patanjali Yoga Sutra, where he's talking about as you calm the oscillations of the mind, you create this quiet state. And what if, as we quiet the mind, we are tuning in and attuning with this scalar potential, this scalar energy that is throughout the universe, so that as our minds quiet, we are actually tuning into the scalar waves of the whole universe. So anyway, there's a lot of information there, but I thought that's a launching off point for talking about how meditation affects the mind and the body and connects us with really everything.
Yeah, Kevin, it's a very beautiful discussion, and it's something that in practical terms, so just a couple of ways that it is that I've connected with both the potential of scalar waves, but also the opportunity provided us by this torus field, the torus, electrical bioenergetic field, is that over the years that I've been doing meditation, many of you that are listening to this will have experienced this as well. If you've had your brainwaves measured through Muse or some other devices, you will notice that there is a component which we call theta brainwaves, which in deeper states of meditation we tend to reach, and the amplitude of the theta grows, and we have a greater propensity to reach these calmer, more sublime states that are known by lots of different names in the ancient traditions. And so I was curious about this, and Kevin, like you and many others in the groups that we've worked with, when we've had this looked at in terms of when we've looked at the power spectrum density of the brainwaves, we discovered that there was a significant proportion of those brainwaves that was represented around about 7.5, 7.6, thereabouts hertz. So in that theta range, right on the Schumann resonance, which has been generally measured around about 7.5, 7.6. So this made me extremely curious, because I'm well aware that all of us meditating are not meditating independent of our environment or each other, the earth, or anything else. So we are subject to and part of and intimately interconnected with electromagnetic waves, with the energy field of the planet. And so I was quite curious that my brainwave, and we'll share the graphs of that both Kevin and I and others have explored, is that we've discovered that our brainwaves do show a very strong spike of activity at exactly that point, at that Schumann resonance. I was curious even more, because a lot of the meditation I was doing was drawing energy up the spine using the piezoelectric effect of squeezing energy in the beginning until that flow became very natural, and then feeling that flow of current up, out through the crown, and out in a toroidal field shape. And to my perhaps maybe not so much to my astonishment, but certainly to my pleasant surprise, I discovered a lot of things happen once I generated this field on a fairly regular, daily effect through meditation. That was my connections, interconnectedness with the earth in really quite demonstrable ways, with witnesses, started to manifest itself more obviously. So one of these was that in a situation with animals, if I was meditating out in the field, out near the ocean, animals pick up naturally on that frequency, because obviously they're operating on that earth frequency, probably to a much larger extent than we do with our busy technology, busy social media, busy minds. And when I was in that space, different things would happen. So I could show my daughter and my wife that I could meditate in our lawn, and then I'd tune into a group of dragonflies, for example, and they would literally come through that magnetism, alight on my hands, and stay there for long periods of time. And the same thing happened when I was out in the wild with snakes. So, much to the amazement of my neighbors, we were out for a walk one day, and I showed them that so a snake actually came, and I literally stopped, and was able to connect with that, and the snake turned. It came towards it. It wasn't in any way surprised, frightened, and neither was I. And I just sat there, and the snake came over and then moved away. But there was a very definite sense of interconnectedness. And the same thing happened with dolphins. I demonstrated to some friends with a pot of dolphins that by meditating on this frequency, that the dolphins would actually come right into the beach, and I could share or commune or connect to them. And this has happened over many, many years with many different kinds of animals. And those of you that are meditator, I'm sure you've found at different times. I've heard in feedback from different friends how the dogs come and sit with them, or the dog has a different relationship with them, or the cat comes and sits with you and has a different relationship. So these really, they're subtle, but they're also in some cases can be made very obvious that this is a very strong interconnection we have with our natural environment through the power of the toroidal field and through the power of energizing the inner environment, because we're like a planet ourselves. We are generating a bioelectric biomagnetic fields, and so we in turn are creating a field that can be palpably felt by others, by animals, by the earth itself. So connecting in with this, and especially over time, as I realized that I was fundamentally functioning at this 7.5, 7.6 hertz, it really made a lot of sense in terms of, it helped me to relate to the science of this, that basically says that, in reference to the scalar waves, that most of us are much more familiar with electric and magnetic fields because they're easy to measure. And we know much more about that than about scalar waves and vector potentials, because those particular fields, as you pointed out, are not as easy to measure. However, for the evolution of what we're doing, subtle energy meditation and energetic body work in general, and energy medicine, there are really important consequences that come from understanding this emerging research and from scalar waves, because fundamentally each of us is emitting, our human body is emitting a biomagnetic and bioelectric field, and that we're aware of it. Say if you're a qigong practitioner and you know about harnessing qi, and you'll be aware that you can connect with energy and transmit energy. And we can think of this in lots of different forms, with Reiki, for example, with sound healing. So there are ways that we're more obviously attuned to it and can see the effects, but especially on subtle energy levels, which are associated with scalar waves and vector potentials, there is a much more subtle level that, because of the propensity of scalar waves to manifest spontaneously anywhere, that simply means that research in the future is going to discover exactly what most healers have already known, that the mere fact that you can't measure it with the current instruments does not mean it doesn't exist. And so
the effects of it, certainly.
Yeah, and you can measure the effects, and your instruments may not show exactly but the research is very new, right, into scalar waves and their effects. So yeah.
Well, actually, it's not as new as we would think. It's just been kind of
Or
shoved to the side.
kind of shoved, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Tesla was doing a tremendous amount of work in the early 1900s around scalar waves and scalar energy, and generating unlimited energy from tapping into the scalar field.
Yeah.
So there has been research done, but a lot of that research has kind of been pushed to the side.
That was something we were discussing earlier, just about the political and economic ramifications of why that happened. So I do think, so it really makes you wonder, because the natural effects of the field itself are present, and people are aware. Anybody who is an energy practitioner is aware of the incredible effects that this has happened. And you do wonder how our world might have shaped itself if, instead of putting it into fossil fuels and all the other areas of life that we
Goals.
yeah. What's that, Kevin?
Pharmaceuticals.
And fossil fuels and pharmaceutical. Exactly. That was exactly what we were talking about before. That if we hadn't put in that and instead put it into alternative energy sources and energy medicine, what a different planet this would be. And I do think the way that once you start to understand the subtle energy anatomy of the body, you start to realize the incredible opportunities of understanding Schumann resonance, because Schumann resonance itself is described in a variety of different ways, including the electric field, the magnetic field, and the way that this interacts with the environment, the way we interact with it. And even though I know there is a lot of there is a lot of research that still needs to be done about the biological effects of that, because some of that is still also in the flow of development, again because of the way that research is focused on other more measurable things like fossil fuels. And I do think that the opportunities for subtle energy medicine are enormous, since and also I think we're part of this longer study of which the outcome is currently unsure, and that is we are creating all kinds of electromagnetic fields artificially, through all radio, television, mobile phones, you name it. Our environments are saturated with these different frequencies, of which that everybody can say this is safe, but then research comes out some years later to find, oh well, actually in the long term, a simple one was that holding your mobile phone to your ear, right? I mean, we all know, we can intuitively feel that a hot battery or a hot phone next to your ear is actually not a good thing. And it's so
we measured with the device a few weeks ago on this chat, and you could see how much electromagnetic energy was associated with the cell phone.
Yeah.
And another thing in this book, in Energy Medicine, that he talks about, that it's not that actually more subtle fields can have a more powerful effect on cells and tissue. It's not like we always think, oh well, higher energy level, that's going to be something that affects you more. But actually the body is tuned to very specific frequencies that affect it. So it could be that a very subtle field can have a very damaging effect on the body, and a very subtle field can have a very healing effect on the body. So it's really a matter of what your body is tuned to and what it's meant to be tuned to and what disrupts that. So he talks about how the frequency range in the theta range tends to be very healing to the body, whereas 50 to 60 hertz range of the electrical system in your house and your devices, and the fact that it's chaotic and not coherent, is very disruptive to the body. But there's one quote in here that is really helpful, and I think it relates to subtle energy meditation. And here Ashman says, one possibility is that an individual capable of generating significant scalar waves would be relatively protected from negative effects of environmental energies. So, in subtle energy meditation, we're tuning inwards, we're becoming attuned to the frequencies, to feeling the different frequencies in meditation, and then to creating this coherent electromagnetic and scalar energy field within the body. Not so much generating it, but maybe attuning to it by letting go of what gets in the way of that.
Yeah, I think there is so much to be said for us tuning in to not only the field of our, or the electric field, biomagnetic field of our body, but of our environment. There is so much to be said for us taking time to attune to that process. And I think that particular quote I love, that we, if we do tune in to our frequency, if we're aware of, and I think this is where measurement, the measuring devices like Muse and flow time and so on, that different different members of our group and heart coherence and so on, is extremely relevant when you are looking to see the vibration or the oscillations or the resonance of your body, heart, mind, where you're actually working at, and how that might have an effect on your environment. And there is no doubt, that things like allergies and sensitivity to particular environments, sensitivity to wireless networks and so on, people say, oh, that's all just, it's just you're hypersensitive. But in fact, there's now genuine research coming out showing that there, depending on how you're working with your body currently, you may be either hypersensitive, or as that quote points to, you may actually be generating a field that's providing you with protection from this. So, and without that knowledge, I mean, there are, as they James also points out in the book about with a lot of the technical information, the public is only given so much, a very narrow view of what is there, because companies are not going to want to operate in areas where they think or are perceived to be unsafe. So they're either going to not release that information, or, as you said, shove it down for a period of time until it seems warranted to release it. And we're in the same situation now with this pandemic, where in these very short periods of time, this vaccine has been rushed out onto the market. And there's all sorts of problems that people are having right here and now with demand and supply, with information, with which ones are effective, which ones are able to cope with different, variants of the virus itself. And it's the same when you consider that translated into a technological and electromagnetic environment, you can see that a lot of the information that's currently out there is competing. A lot of it is not clear, and it's still at this point, at least for society, it's a study that has really long-term effects that we're really still right in the middle of in terms of getting the results.
And so what do we do in the face of that is what can we do to boost our natural coherence frequencies? And we can do that by what we do internally, like through meditation, through bringing the body, heart, mind into this theta coherence, and also by spending time in the natural environment, and where those theta frequencies are everywhere all around us in the natural world. And those are two ways that we can really come into greater coherence and boost our immune response. And that's really the heart of all of this, is boosting our body's own ability to heal itself and regenerate itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like the way, Kevin, that they do sum a lot of this up by saying, especially you've mentioned before about the different fields that are oscillating at different frequencies, and that they do comment that frequencies of around 2 or 7 or 10 or 15 hertz can actually stimulate healing, tissues, regenerating nerves, bones, ligaments, and capillaries in ways that are, very profoundly healing for the body. And I think once we learn, and this is the advantage, as you say, of subtle energy meditation, once we learn how to shift states. So I think that's something that we've taught a lot over the past couple of years, is that it is really important in subtle energy meditation to be able to shift a state, to be able to understand what it means to boost a frequency, to lower a frequency, and to know just how to do that. And the more that you become accustomed to and familiar with the signature of your brain and heart, and the more you understand, correlated with that signature, how to shift to these different frequencies. So to shift to a 7 point, so that's something I found really curious and incredibly beneficial, is that with the shift to 7.5 hertz theta, you can feel it. You know what that feels like. It's kind of a lit state, and then you shift to this calm 15 hertz alpha, and you know what that feels like. And then you shift up into a higher gamma state, and you know what that feels like. And you can equally work between these different states in order to activate different healing properties in the body. And it does feel different.
And they mutually reinforce each other.
Yeah.
And they seem to, by exercising those different frequencies, they tend to help you rest in this baseline theta state, which is so healthy.
Yeah. So I think, the implications for this, for body work, healing, meditation, for general well-being and health are enormous. So I think it's a wonderfully profound topic, and something that I know everybody here has a vested interest in terms of health and healing and well-being. So we really hope that you've enjoyed the chat, and it will share with us in exploring the immense opportunities of subtle energy.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you too. Thank you, everybody. Much love.